Video Bootleg.
Welcome to this very unofficial edition of Video Ditch. I'm Raccoons here with TheOneBuns and Antoids, and we're going to be discussing everyone's favorite medium in place of Somebody Stop Me and Super Samicom. Now, what have they been up to? They've been radio silent for the last couple days.
Last I heard, Somebody Stop Me was found face down in Japan, dressed as Detective Conan.
With his finger cut off.
Yeah, missing a finger. Indisposed. It's a real shame, but I'm sure
The Kappa had stolen his Shirin Otama.
I'm sure that in due time they will recover and appear, and we will get more of the glorious podcasting.
But for now, you're stuck with us. Get used to it.
Do we have to do like impressions of Nick and Sam? Or like, do I have to go? Today I'll be talking about The Legend of Heroes: Trails in the Sky. That will be the game that I am discussing today.
This is the only game that Antoids knows about, by the way.
And that's a base
It's
game
only
to know
one
about, because Trails is peak.
Sorry, I guess if I was being Nick, I'd be like, today I will be talking about Earthbound and Dragon Quest, the only two games that I know about.
Oh, and Yick, you can't forget that.
Oh, of course. Only the real yeekheads know.
Actually, if you were Nick, you would say something like, today I'll be talking about Hoshiwo Miru Hito for the Super Famicom.
If I was Nick, I would be saying something like Wubba Lubba
I don't
Lub
think
Dub.
you'd say that at all. I think that's disrespectful.
That's a
No,
character.
I don't think so. I think even he has moved on to Smiling Friends, much like all the bong shops.
Damn. Yeah, much like all of them, all the vape shops.
Well, gang, what's the latest weird Japanese thing that you have gotten into? What's everyone Japanning up with lately?
I don't know, I'm playing a lot of Dragon Ball lately.
Oh, that's the new, Sparking Zero game that came out.
Yeah. I don't know, I wasn't, excited for it to come out, and then, 4 days before it came out, I found out that it had, what-if scenarios, alternate, what if this happened, what if this guy beat this guy at this time instead of getting his ass kicked? And I was like, oh, that's cool.
So is this like a spiritual successor to the Xenoverse games?
So way back at, the GameCube PS2 era, there was the Budokai games that were developed by Atari. And those were sort of like a Soul Calibur-esque 3D fighter that sort of locked two characters on a 2D plane. And then they made 3 of those, and then there were some licensing issues, and then another company got the license and made the Tenkaichi games. And a lot of people thought that the Budokai games and the Tenkaichi games were the same developers, but they were not. And the mechanics of the Tenkaichi games are what's called an arena fighter. Basically just means you're in a really big space and there's a lot of freedom of movement, and you're just you have a really limited moveset that's very flashy, and it's just sort of there's some strategy to it, but it's mostly spectacle, and it's kind of like the first person that gets the upper hand has the ability to totally win the fight no matter what the other person does. Kind of like a hyper fighter, like the equivalent of a hyper fighter if you did that in a Soul Calibur context. So yeah, and then Sparking Zero is the first one of those in 7 years or something. There's been a 7-year gap.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've thoroughly checked out of the Dragon Ball saga. I've realized that I've peaked. I can only get so much. So
well, Dragon Ball only gets worse after Goku defeats Piccolo.
Well, isn't that really early on in the
fan
show?
fiction.
It's when you're gonna cut out. Yes.
Yeah, it's unfortunately even before Z happens. Everyone lies and says that Z gets good. They're lying. Z actually gets worse, but they won't tell you that.
It's pretty much true. It's like Goku fights Vegeta, and then Z just drops off a cliff.
I've actually been looking into kind of getting into some more traditional visual novels. So I have some friends around me that have been recommending some. Recently I was thinking about picking up Kara no Shoujo.
You mean Katawa Shoujo?
No, not Katawa Shoujo. You know, I had my high school phase. I've played that, been there, done that. So Kara no Shoujo is it's an older visual novel, and it's like a detective puzzle game, but like it really, really leans on the detective angle from what I've seen. A lot of people apparently slag it for being really, really difficult, but I'm kind of excited to see, like, you know, because most detective visual novels, you kind of play them and you're like, well, that wasn't really challenging. Like, I didn't really feel like a hard-boiled detective in that. So I guess we'll see what that is.
I haven't played Kara no Shoujo either, but from what people have said about the game, it relies on a lot of old school kind of point and click detective or point and click adventure game shit, where if you don't click on a single pixel like 3 hours ago, you can get locked into the bad ending. So I would suggest going in with a guide. But otherwise, it's supposed to be like a phenomenal story, and yeah, like gory and with the horror aspects and shit like that.
That's perfect. It's perfect for the spooky season.
My question is, when are you finishing the girl that chants love at the bounds of the world?
Well, that game involves time
Never,
travel, so I too will have to time travel back to when
you wanted to finish that game.
I would have to start it over to really finish it.
That wouldn't take that long. You didn't play that much of it.
Yeah, it's true. I only
you could
got
redo that in like an hour and a half at most.
Important question: which version of that are you playing?
The PC.
We were playing the good
version.
one.
Oh,
Yeah, the good one.
Hell yeah, that game's soundtrack is incredible. If you need something to listen to, or you're trying to get like a good chunk of work done, throw on the Girl Who Chants at the World soundtrack.
Yeah, it's it really is like it's pretty infectious.
The only thing about the Switch version that I am sort of bummed out about is that I don't have access to the little shmup that they have as like a pre-order thing. But I was not gonna fucking pre-order the Switch version. Fuck that.
Yeah, Yuno's 8-bit adventure or whatever the hell.
Yeah, I think that's a pre-order only bonus.
It's so funny because like in the same way I see the echo of a lot of things, like that game's OST reminds me of some of the motifs used in like Darkseid. I know that that's such a weird ass pull, and like Darkseid's OST mostly sucks, but
the composer for Yuno's kind of a big deal. That's Yuzo Koshiro.
What else did they do?
They've done I think he's Streets of Rage. What else has he done? Off the top of my head, it's hard for me to fucking say. A bunch of stuff for Falcom, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Dragon Slayer, he did the Dragon Slayer games. Gradius, Tower of Draga, Space Harrier.
So this guy's got range.
Revenge of Shinobi, Shenmue, Etrian Odyssey.
wait,
like
Shenmue,
all of the
Etrian Odyssey, what?
Kid Icarus Uprising.
That's crazy.
Oh, incredible soundtrack.
Project Cross Zone, Secret of Mana.
Secret of Mana?
Yeah, this Soul Cresta, wonderful. He's got some songs in Wonderful 101 Remastered. Not the original.
How old
but the
is this
remastered.
guy?
Well, he got his start in Pepsi Man, if that helps.
Oh yeah.
Oh no,
yeah,
wait, sorry, I'm
okay.
thinking of Uchikoshi. Sorry.
Right.
He got his start in the first Yeast game.
Okay. Oh man.
So he was composing back in 1985.
Okay. So he's been around, but I mean, a lot of those legacy composers.
ActRaiser, that's another one. The original Sonic the Hedgehog. He gets around.
The original.
These soundtracks that you're listing are like all dotted throughout the top 100 game soundtracks ever list, if there ever was an official one.
Yeah, he's a big deal.
You know what would be so funny though is if I bet if you like looked at everything that he did, and there's like actually 100 games that he did every single year, and like 99 of them sucked.
Yeah.
like 99 of them are like Barbie Dreamhouse Adventure or something like that.
No,
like
he's pretty solid.
Oh yeah, pretty consistently. There was some image I had seen recently where some my least favorite habit is like regurgitating some meme macro, but like it was the developer of some shovelware game who ended up becoming the head designer on some huge remaster or something recently. I can't even remember what it was. Ants, do you remember what I'm talking about?
No, not particularly.
Oh, it was like a Madagascar thing. Some guy who like was the lead producer on a Madagascar video game, like ended up working on like a AAA studio. Real heartwarming. It's always nice when you see it.
For the super like shitty shovelware games, like people forget that there's real gamers who have like actual taste working on these things. They just don't often have the budget or time to actually make a good game.
I wonder what the management thinks when they are in that environment. Like, what's the over under for the management of Barbie Dreamhouse Adventure?
All the mini games don't crash the game immediately. Stamp of approval. Looks good to go.
I've gotta look. We really need the honeycomb game to fit on the CD-ROM inside the cereal box. So I'm gonna need this to be under 700 megabytes. Okay, 768. You gotta compress the audio. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. No, it's too early to move to DVD. We can't do that.
It's impossible. Can't be done.
Chex Quest.
I consulted the stars. It will not be happening.
Did you ever play Chex Quest, Raccoon?
I have not. I'm not like a Doom guy, but it's interesting that they just used the base of a very good game instead of building everything out for like some throwaway kind of project.
You never did you ever get a video game out of a strange place, like a cereal box, or even someplace more bizarre than that?
I'd have to think. I wasn't around for the Burger King Sneak King game. That was a bit before my time.
Did they give out Sneak King at Burger King? I didn't know this.
Yes, they did. That was an inclusion. It was that. They had that really shitty racing game and some party game that everybody forgot about. But there was also Sneak King.
So wait, Sneak King wasn't sold at game stores. It was acquired through the restaurant.
It might have also been sold at game stores. I don't know.
Well, it was definitely
This is
resold
crazy.
at game stores because everybody
Yeah,
was sending it to
certainly.
Yeah.
GameStop.
I acquired mine through a yard sale. I thought that's how everyone got their copy.
Yeah,
Like,
that makes more sense.
I thought that they just appeared like lawn gnomes, at yard sales, and you would just like go like, "Oh wow, Sneak King, there it is!" This like bizarre game that nobody's ever seen before, coded by I don't even know who.
God knows who. Probably the same guy who did the Madagascar game.
Did you ever beat Sneak King?
Oh no, I didn't play it.
What about you, Ants?
Well, sorry. My response to that was gonna be, did you ever beat off? Did you ever beat my favorite game off?
I don't know what video game that would ever be appropriate to say, like, yeah, I beat that. Like, I never have to play that game again. Actually, I guess RE2 make, right?
Yeah.
Like, I beat all the tofu missions. I never have to play it again.
Yeah.
I'm all good. I've done it. I've scraped the bottom of the barrel,
I've
and I
mastered
never want to
this
look
game.
back. Yeah, I don't.
I've mastered Hatris.
Yeah. Well, guys, do we want to talk about the Game Freak leaks that happened?
Wait, before that, I'd like to talk about my weird.
Well,
niche
hang on.
Japanese-
This is how we know you're not a professional. What you should have done was say, "Oh, the game that I've mastered is Pokemon Red." Hey, speaking of Pokemon,
All right.
that's what you should have done.
Well, what's the weird Japanese thing you've gotten into?
Well, I was gonna tag in when he said shmup because my game is also a shmup. It's kind of thematically relevant because this is a bootleg broadcast. So I've been playing Radar G2. That's a portmanteau
Okay.
of radio and allergy. And this is a
Okay.
this is a very niche Japanese shoot 'em up done by RS34, who were formerly Milestone devs, who were formerly Compile devs, who did a bunch of shoot 'em ups and Puyo Puyo and whatever. But anyways, this game is the tagline I have for it is shmup with a killer aesthetic. So they got this guy KDHN. That's his pseudonym. And this guy who
All right, I'm seeing this. This is like 1942.
kinda. It gets a little bit more crazy. So the guy who made the art and music in this game, he works, his day job is working for Type Moon, doing the music for that game. So when he gets done with that job, he clocks into RS34 and does all the sprites and the music for Raturgy 2, which has sort of this like house electronic kind of soundtrack.
Okay, so this is just a big Genitos ripoff.
Oh, kinda. All those
Just
shoot 'em ups
stomping
kind of
all
like
over. No, go ahead.
all those shoot 'em ups kind of like take DNA from each other. They'll have like if like Dodonpachi has like a chaining scoring system, like other shmups around the time would like take that, but it's the bar decreases faster, or maybe like your power up it allows you to keep your chain. But for this one, it's kind of out in left field. All right, so the two ship types were Murasame, which plays really radically different than any other shmup I've seen, where you sort of have dual stick controls. You'll move with your left analog stick, and you'll move a circle called your EPSnet with your right control stick. And then you roll your EPSnet over the enemies, and they'll get like marked, and then you gotta beat them really quick to keep your multiplier up. It's got this nice.
Okay, that's kind of Star Fox-esque, but a little bit.
That's not even a shoot 'em up. That's a real shooter.
Yeah.
They're two distinct things.
Yeah.
What platform are you playing this on?
So I'm playing this on Nintendo Switch, and it's also out on PS4. This game doesn't have a PC port or a Western release.
Actually, I guess if anything, it's more like Sin and Punishment, not Star Fox. Like Sin and Punishment, the entire game is kind of like that, even though they're both real shooters.
Oh, this is Japanese only.
Yes, and that's usually not an issue for shoot 'em ups. They're pretty language barrier agnostic.
Right.
On the side of the screen, there's all sorts of on the side of the screen, it's like a Twitch chat kind of thing, where characters will be commenting on what's going on in your shoot 'em up game. And in fact, on the top of the screen, there's like Nico Doga comments flying from left to right.
They were kind of doing something well before Mullet Mad Jack did that. You know, that was like, I think, the first big indie to do. Well, I can think of one other indie that was integrating chat into that. Looking at screenshots of this looks really, really interesting, though.
Yeah, I have an LP on in the background.
This is really, really cool, and like the art. Do you know who did the art for this by any chance? Like the character art?
Oh, the character art is the same Daisuke Nagata, who also did the music for the game. He's multi-talented.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Is he a one-man team or?
I think it's a very small studio, RS34. But they're always putting out like postcards and soundtracks and all sorts of like fun, unique art of the characters and whatnot.
How did you so what got you into this series? Like, how'd you find this creator? Or how'd you find this game?
I found this game like looking at like Dreamcast and GameCube games with and one that always stuck out to me was the art of Tadayo. She's the girl in the on the box art of the Dreamcast game with the glasses and the hat and whatnot. So I looked into it and I started playing the game and I'm like, man, this soundtrack is jamming. This first game soundtrack is also incredible, and that's on like Spotify and Apple Music, all your streaming services.
You know what's so funny is like they say you can't judge a book by its cover. I feel like with video games, there's so many games I picked up because of the cover. Like I can't.
Such as?
It's so fascinating.
Number 1, Halo.
Definitely.
Number 2, Ninja Gaiden.
I can definitely think of like seeing some of the spine covers, like BioShock's cover. I always remember as a kid being really interested in BioShock's cover, like the rusted over like font and stuff. I think I saw BioShock 2's cover before I saw BioShock 1. One that I always sticks out in my mind, and people are kind of middling on this game, but Deus Ex not Human Revolution's Invisible War is an interesting cover. Like the guy holding the gun to the side. It's very of the time. This is really cool though. And yeah, I guess that girl with the glasses is like this game's mascot?
Yeah, kinda. She's kind of like a Navi kind of character where she's always butting in the original game. But everybody likes her, so they kind of made her in the sequel. They made her a larger character, and in the game you're kind of like fighting different versions of her. As far as I can tell, I actually can't read Japanese, so I really don't know what's going on.
Yeah, well, that's the, even if you disagreed with the plot, you wouldn't know it. So that's pretty good. It could
Exactly,
be,
it's a
it
win-win.
could be the best game ever made, for all you know.
Well, it's fun to play, and that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. So good beats, good gameplay. That's all you need.
All right, I think we should get into they're calling it the Terra Leak. This is the Pokemon Giant Data Breach.
They're calling it the Gaia leak. They're calling it the worst leak of all time.
Well, maybe for Game Freak, because we actually got a ton of new information that we would have never seen before. Had some brave soul not hacked into Nintendo's web servers and took all their information.
Yeah, I really like casting this guy who did this as a hero and not as a bad actor for breaching his server and staying in there for a month and then leaking a bunch of employee names and email addresses along with it. Yeah.
maybe that's not great, but fuck Nintendo. I'm fine with the Pokemon Company taking an L on this one.
So I guess going over it, so this was disclosed the files started getting spread a few days ago, and the breach officially occurred about a month ago. Do I have that right?
Yes.
And and this occurred via, from what I can tell, a phishing link that someone high up in Game Freak. We actually, I've seen the name of, I think, who it is and the role, but it's someone high up, and
it seems like they have admin access. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but something in their thing, they on that panel at the top, it says admin.
Right.
So I assume that's a drop down that gives you access to admin functions.
Yeah. And judging by just the sheer scope of the data that's been exfiltrated, about a terabyte of it, which is a lot of data, but in terms of raw data, it's actually not that much. Most people would hear a terabyte and that's like a lot, but if you look at historical data, like, compared to many other game companies, there's tons where it surpasses terabytes, especially if you look at like industrial. But we have like quite a few things, like quite a few SKUs. We have project names.
It might be just like a terabyte in file size, but I think the quality of information that we got is just incredible. Looking through it, I've got a list. We got the Heart Gold and Soul Silver source code now.
There's partial, at least, source code for Gaia K and N as well.
Which was work in progress, or?
Yes,
that's Gen 10.
Wow.
Yes, it's like the follow-up to their last shitty game. I don't know. But the interesting part about this is it's actually in development for the Switch 2, codenamed The Out.
I thought so. It's codenamed the what?
The Out.
That's
a good question. You're gonna have to bring that up with Nintendo. Like I didn't codename it that.
The ounce.
Maybe it weighs nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of code names.
I mean, it might be something like this is just tales from my ass.wav, but it could be something like, if it's a cloud client, there's hardly any hardware on it, so it's very lightweight or something. I mean, who knows? The GameCube was called the fucking Dolphin because it had Wave Race on it. So who fucking knows what they're thinking.
The Wii U is called the Cafe for no goddamn reason.
Oh, was it really? I remembered that there was Dolphin, but I know that was for the Wii, or there was...
I think Wii was
the
Revolution.
Revolution
oh,
was the
right.
Wii.
Revolution for the Wii. What an interesting one.
'Cause it revolutionized gameplay.
Maybe because of the spin
Yeah, you
motion.
play Wii Sports and you're like, man, we are never going back. Next console generation, we're going back.
You know, ounce could work if this console weighs 28 grams. If they're targeting like a lightweight thing. I don't know. I don't know how much the original Switch weighed, but whatever.
Switch is kind of heavy.
The thing that I was actually interested in was the concept art. That was the thing that grabbed my attention, looking at a lot of the concept art that was showing off like darker versions. Yeah.
Beta Cacturn, Beta Metagross, Yin Yang.
It just kind of
Absol.
shows you like not super American McGee, but a little bit like twisted Pokemon versions, and it shows like a side of the Pokemon games that I don't think like
The weird mystery gift turtle.
yeah, that one's the perfect.
What Doug Trio looks like under the ground.
I'm pretty sure one of them was literally fucking Tentaquill.
Yeah.
It is interesting because like Pokemon, like before they went to like the Game Boy Advance, etc., like the character art at least was like, kind of more weird and fucked up than the Pokemon they create today. Like nowadays it's like, oh look, it's a fondue Pokemon, but back in the day they weren't afraid to like make some real weirdos. Like they would never make Pineco now, definitely not Fortress.
I was talking to a buddy of mine, and the conclusion that we more or less came to was, 1995, Pokemon Red, Blue, Green, Yellow. That game had like references to war and death in it, so there was like a little bit of darkness in it. And then you think about that audience is still playing Pokemon or is like growing out of Pokemon 10 years later in 2005 when Diamond and Pearl comes out. And a lot of the other stuff that's in the leak that was cut is like is darker in tone. Like the Pokemon designs are dark in tone, and then the subject matter is dark in tone. Like there's stuff about like a woman getting kidnapped by Slaykoths and then getting impregnated and giving
What
birth
the?
to a
I
Slaykoth.
saw that too. There's no fucking way that that's true. All these leaks are kind of operating in like a fog of war, right?
Well, there's a famous translation change in Diamond and Pearl where in the Japanese version they say, yeah, people in Pokemon used to get married all the time because there used to be no difference between people and Pokemon. And then in English it's just like, yeah, people in Pokemon used to eat together is how they translated that. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was like Pokemon lore that described humans or Pokemon giving birth to each other.
I wasn't
I
I am not a Pokemon fan, like outright. I've barely played Pokemon compared to anyone, but I had seen Diamond and Pearl from a cursory glance on the outside. And the tone of that game, it looked like it was going to go about as far as they could into the realms of like religion and downright like establishing some real taboo shit and
yeah, because it's the creation myth.
yeah. So I mean, as far as like weird mythic and dark tones, I mean, I kind of think that was, not there since Pokemon Red, but certainly something that the creators knew about and were working towards.
There was one really funny image, and it makes no sense, where there's like a triangle placed haphazardly over.
Oh, that's actually strongly backed up by stuff that shows up in Diamond and Pearl. Hang on, I've got an image for
Oh, is
this.
it? Yeah, explain.
That image is super
So,
real.
we should give context.
This just appears when Arceus appears.
So
in
when
game.
Arceus appears in game, there is an image of what appears to be a sigil over a background of some like trees over a sky, and the sigil is a set of three circles, and then there's triangles that are nested within each other. And then related to that is this image, which came from...
it's signed as if Masuda himself made it.
And this is dated August 1st, 2005, attributed to Game Freak.
Attributed to Masuda. the fucking creator of Pokemon.
It looks like an honest-to-God CAD design document.
So it is. So for those on the audio side, it is the exact same sigil with overlays of text relating to Pokemon names, including some of the Pokemon gods that show up in some of the later Pokemons. So, I mean, I think if people were pretending that, Pokemon wasn't going for something pretty heavy, I think those rumors are very much impossible to dismiss.
Well, pretty heavy with like an asterisk. So obviously it's like Pokemon at the end of the fucking day. There's like Youngster Joey and oh wow, aren't shorts comfortable?
There is an argument to be made that this could have been the author's intent and Game Freak could not be allowed to express that if Nintendo thought that it was not appropriate. That can totally happen.
And absolutely this shit is not getting made today. Like Pokemon's a cash cow franchise. We can't have any like artistic expression in these new games.
This was also contemporary with like Shadow the Hedgehog and stuff like that too, where a lot of the kid-friendly franchises of the 90s were being given a quote-unquote modern, edgy veneer that would make them appeal to kids who played them in the 90s and were now teenagers. It is very easy for me to imagine that internally they were like, well, what if we just go dark with it? Like, do we get that audience back? Does that work? And then deciding, you know what? No, we keep the appeal broad. Maybe have little hints of that here and there, and that'll be the most profitable way to do it.
They did kind of try that with Black and White and Black and White 2, which Black and White 2 has a dev build out now, by the way. Hoping to see where the Pokemon fans do with that. But they did age up the characters, and they had some themes that you can, I guess.
I mean, I skipped Gens 3 and 4 and then came back for Black and White, so I guess that worked.
And it's Kino. The Black and White 2 is arguably the best one. It's that or Heart Gold Soul Silver.
And then also, from these leaks, it's not just Pokemon. It's not just Pokemon art. There was also some code names. We got some SKUs. There's a code name for a project called Synapse, which is labeled as a Splatoon-like multiplayer battle game for Pokemon. So Pokemon adjacent, but, kind of interesting. Apparently there was some documents that came out that were very funny that were actually like descriptions and reference images that were used to actually, draw inspiration for what the characters would eventually look like. So those are going around.
God, I don't even know what you'd call it, but like the one-page summary of this is what we want for the design, draw it. For each of the gym leaders, and then like the Elite Four, and
yeah. So it would have the character's name. It would have a description. It would have like this is what they do. This is their personality.
Like here's their blood type. Here's what they like and dislike. Here's what their gym looks like.
Here's a couple headshots of actors, and then
these are like actors that match the vibe.
The one for Lenora was really funny.
Go on.
No, it's
go on and describe it for the audience.
No, I'm just saying that it has all the like sensitivity for like racial topics that a middle-aged Japanese businessman can muster. So I appreciate that.
Well, that's funny because the one for Skyla was like she has an ethnic personality. she has like an ethnic level of argumentativeness or something.
What?
They got a different guy to write that one. They didn't have this. They didn't have the same guy. They were writing a bunch the same day, and that guy had to go to the bathroom. And there was a deadline, so the B team wrote that one. Or maybe the B team wrote the polite one. Which one's funnier?
It could go either way.
It really could go either way.
No one could ever know.
One thing I wanted to wrap up with is that this whole discussion is very Pokemon-centric, but Game Freak back then made kind of worthwhile games that weren't Pokemon. I know that Quinty, which is this weird tile flipping game that was on the Famicom, I believe. They actually had a remake of that for the Super Nintendo that was canned for whatever reason. But it's there and you can play it.
Ethnic temperament. That was the translation of it.
Anyways, they also had some like weird DS prototypes of like Pokemon kind of games. I haven't really looked into those. I don't know if you have.
No, I have not looked into the Yoshi's Cookie knockoffs that the Pokemon.
I think
company
I've been
made.
out of just this entire wheelhouse for my whole life. And at a certain point you're like, am I going to become the Nintendo
Well, I'm
person?
definitely not getting it now.
Yeah. Like, oh, am I going to buy the DS when the 3DS is out? No.
Is there some point, like, when you hit adulthood, you just have to, like, start tallying it up? Like, I can get a PC. I can fucking pirate all the Switch games on my PC. I don't really need this new console.
Yeah. That's, you know, you do eventually, like, I think I used to be that way with, like, a lot of genres where I would say, like, oh, I'll never play that genre. And then at this point, I've played, like, quite a few JRPGs. Like, I'm not a JRPG fiend, but I've played quite a few. So, you change. You pick stuff up. So.
And it's good to try out different shit all the time. Let that be the message you take away from this bootleg episode of Video Ditch.
Yeah, try different things, That sushi, it may smell expired, and it probably is. You will go to the hospital, but you should still... I'm not a doctor, but you should still try it.
That's true. Might go to the gas station later, pick some up.
Yeah, the egg salad sandwich from Futurama.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, you know about that. Don't soft sell me, okay?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
You will be sandbagged, and you will like.
Well,
it.
the only thing scarier than a joke that doesn't land is Halloween, which is the season that is upon us. Is the time for spooky games.
That's right. It's October. It's the time to get in the mood and play some horror games. I haven't actually played a single horror game this month. So what games have you been playing?
What games have you been playing? What games have you been playing? What have you been up to, Ants? What horror games have you been playing?
Dragon Ball.
Yeah, what's
the scariest
what's
game.
scary about Dragon Ball?
Sometimes you have to fight Frieza, and he's like, I'm gonna blow up the Earth. That's pretty scary. I wouldn't want the Earth to be blown up. I'd be afraid if the Earth was getting blown up. Like, I could put myself into that situation and empathize with it as an empath.
As a media literate empath.
Yeah.
A media literate empath. That's a very, very modern era.
That's a dangerous combination.
Yeah. I think that's like Tic-Tac-Toe. Or, what's the Battleship? Maybe it's close to Battleship. I obviously, resident horror fan here, have been Octobering out. Feel like the last few years, I haven't been playing nearly as many horror games. So this year I'm trying to make up for it. So this week I have fired up quite a few. Last night I played a game called Hollow Body, which is a third-person survival horror game. It's kind of definitely wearing its inspiration on its sleeve. I do think that there are times where it never really surpasses its inspirations. It's obviously trying to be Silent Hill, but it's taking place in the future, so its UI is very, very close to another survival horror game called Signalis, which is very, very good.
What's that game's UI is like?
So that game's UI is simplistic, chunky, and pixelated. So if you had any idea, like, think about the original classic survival horror UIs like Silent Hill 1 or Resident Evil 1, but in a 2D plane, and it's all pixel art, and your colors are vibrant when they are, but it's only colors that are like red and orange. Everything has like that feel of death, like a deadly machinery that will kill you if you mess with it. That's kind of the vibe of Signalis. That's kind of its world, is like the world is mechanical and deadly. Most of the labor is done by machines, and it's all very kind of gritty. So Hollow Body is like obviously trying to mesh these things together. It's trying to be Silent Hill with its story while using some of these UI elements for its menu system. It did have some interesting mechanics that I thought were pretty cool. Like while you're playing the game, you can press and hold triangle to quick equip the pistol and the melee weapon, which Signalis had the ability to turn the flashlight on and off as like an upgrade, but it didn't have a system quite that unique or quite that dedicated, or like a quick map button like dedicated to that. It's a little slow, but I do think that if you are into it and the trailer grabs you, then you can give it a shot. I also played two games by a creator named Sheila's Art. Everyone has probably heard of this creator because they have made a ton of games. So they basically are really fixated on making horror games where you're doing something regularly and then spooky stuff is happening around you. So you're going to be working at a coffee shop and there's going to be creepy guys that are coming up around you, or you're like at a train station and you're kind of like looping through environments and things are out of place.
Yeah, they're like kind of like 3D horror games, right?
Yeah, they're very much 3D narrative experiences. This is kind of weird because they don't have the transition effect at all, and they are genuinely regular narrative experiences, but they do have that vibe of the PS1 Dreams game. What is that?
LSD Dream Emulator?
Yeah. Yeah. Just in terms of their graphical presentation, their chunky, pixely nature, the way that they feel, they very much come off as like dreamlike. And I think that's what kind of sells them. I had played two. I had played Ghost Train and The Bathhouse. I can't say I recommended Ghost Train. It to me just it felt like too much of a memory game and it wasn't actually scary. But I sunk my time a lot more and got way more invested in The Bathhouse, which is just kind of like you being a character that is thrust into a situation where you are working at a haunted bathhouse, and haunted bathhouse things happen while you deal with grandmas who are drunk and yakuzas with tattoos who aren't allowed in the bathhouse. Very cool.
What are haunted bathhouse things?
So there's things like you'll be washing off at the end of your shift and then a voice will like ask you for a bucket. And there's no one else in the building. Things like the boiler's temperature adjusting, things like there's a monitor that's supposed to show where the boilers are and it has a different view and things will appear in the camera. Or sometimes you'll get unwelcome visitors and things will happen with those unwelcome visitors. There's also some other stuff that's going around that's kind of interesting. It's not just the ghost thing. There's a whole arc dealing with the Yakuza, a whole arc dealing with the previous owner, the previous worker there. There's an arc that's involving a wanted man that's like being looked out for. So you've got a couple of leads, a couple of red herrings to really try and amp up the atmosphere. And this is all while you're under the pressure of like, okay, I can make some mistakes, but I can't mess up too much or else I'll get fired. So it's very much a good spooky experience, and I've really enjoyed it.
I do see what you mean. Video games are really good about like you can like fuck with the environment in ways that aren't natural to like really sell horror, and you can do that in movies, I guess. But since you're like immersed in a game, usually in like a first person view, like I feel it's much more effective.
Yeah, there's so many unsettling things that I think that you can do in unique ways. Whereas with filmography, it's so rare to come across something that's uniquely bizarre. You know, like when I think of things that are like truly haunting in film, it's like the single frame in The Exorcist that I've only caught once, and the thing in Insidious, right, where you don't really catch it until you know. Whereas with horror games, there's a lot more that you can do with the maps moving around you, impossible geometry, things scaling around, things not looking right. Yeah, it's just a lot that I feel you can do a lot more. And plus you have the controls to mess with too. So you can really screw with the player. I also played Moving Houses, which was an indie game that I had been following for a while. Moving Houses is just more of a narrative structure game. There's not really much to say about it. It's just sort of this cutesy on the surface game about trying to unpack your stuff from a house. And as you unpack, things start to get a little weird. And as you continue to unpack, the things that you have to unpack increase. And the game just kind of unravels itself from there. A pretty good experience. So there's a lot of horror games dropping around this time. A lot of interesting indie games dropping. So got lots to look forward to this Halloween season.
I want to talk about real quick. I don't I didn't really beat it in October, but a couple of months ago I read through Higurashi for the first time.
Really?
And I guess that counts as a horror. Have you?
No, I am interested though.
Okay, I won't give away too much then. Ants, have you read or watched Higurashi?
Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of know what's going on, but it's really like a dark and fucked up mystery horror story about the power of friendship and about forgiveness. That's a really heartwarming tale. So essentially, it's the guy who wrote it is this guy Ryakishi07. He's currently working on one of the new Silent Hill games. I'm pretty sure. Before that, he actually wrote a bunch of critically acclaimed visual novels. One, Umineko When They Cry, and his first one, Higurashi When They Cry, which is sort of set in a small town Japan. Think cicadas buzzing all the time. It's actually what Higurashi means in Japanese. Secret Japanese lesson in this bootleg edition of Video Ditch. Anyways, this guy Keiichi, he moves to this rural town, and it seems very idyllic. It's there's lots of cool vistas, and the people seem nice and friendly. At first, you quickly learn that there's something deeper going on in this town, and it takes about 100 goddamn hours to actually get to the conclusion. Partially because there's a lot to get through, and every aspect of the game is sort of turned over and unturned over. And also because Ryakishi is a really verbose writer. So it does drag hit points, especially when you're going through the slice of life sections. But like many 100,000-hour games, like Trails, it is worth the squeeze eventually. And there's a bunch of very cool twists in the story that I won't spoil for any of our dear listeners in case you go to try Higurashi for yourself. If you have no experience with the story, I recommend giving the first episode on Steam a shot. It's free, and you'll get an idea of whether you're gonna like the rest of the story. From there, I also recommend playing. There's a patch that you can get allows you to view the original sprites and backgrounds, where the characters are like fucked up, ball hands with like 4 fingers.
That's good.
And they look just god awful. Go look up.
I prefer that.
Yes, I think it adds to the aesthetic, and there's a the characters are really more emotive with these old sprites. So definitely give that a shot.
So is that what you've been? Is that what you've been playing lately?
That's what I've played a couple of months ago.
Okay.
But
okay.
It really took me like an entire month to get through, where my only game time was spent reading through that shit. It is very, very long. I wouldn't recommend somebody who's like looking for something light to get into, but it is quite good. And if you've already watched the anime, I don't know, call it a wash.
I've seen quite a few like people talk about it, and it keeps cropping up in discussions, naturally. Like I'll be around visual novel people, and we'll talk about like just mid experience, we'll talk about like our 10 or 20 hour experiences, and then naturally it'll lead to like someone talking about it just briefly, and they'll just say like, oh yeah, this is like the best thing ever. Like this is great.
My favorite part about like discussions amongst visual novel people is they usually only have like 3 or 4 of the kami-ge under their belt. So when somebody meets like another person who's like read their like visual novels that they're autistically into, it's like a 4-hour discussion can emerge from that. That doesn't happen all the time because there's like probably like 20 or 30 kami-ge.
What is a kami-ge?
Ants, you know Japanese, right?
It's like God game.
Yes. It's a very highly regarded visual novel.
Oh, okay. As opposed to as opposed to Hoshi, which was
like 99% of visual novels,
which was a shit game.
I agree.
Which was a shit game.
Yes.
From what I had seen.
In fact, Hoshiori is actually Hoshiwo whatever the fuck. Hoshiori is a visual novel, but Hoshiwo Stargazer is that's a Densetsu no Kusoge. It's a legendary shit game.
I was looking into that game, Hoshiwo Miruhito, and I was looking at like the description and stuff, like reading the article about it, and it actually reminded me of a game that Falcom published before they did Trails, a game called Rin, which was also a cyberpunk game, I just thought about how the player starts at level 0 in Hoshiwo, which is very similar to like the player kind of being like a ghost in Rin. So I thought that was kind of funny, like that echo of that idea.
Is Rin as dog shit as Hoshiwo?
Rin is not. Rin is a good game from what I've heard. It's just in Japanese, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it is very much heavily narrative, so I think it's kind of difficult to actually play if you don't know Japanese. I tried it and I washed out pretty quickly. Honestly, in terms of media consumption, Ants, what media have you been consuming? What you been watching? What you been reading?
Oh, maybe some Dragon Ball.
Yeah? Dragon Ball?
Yeah, I like when Goku does the Kamehameha and then fucking disintegrates his enemy. That's pretty cool. I'm usually sitting down on the couch when I watch that, but then when he does that, I stand up.
You have to give him the spirit power when he's doing the spirit bomb. I've never watched Dragon Ball. That's the issue when you get to be one of these like online cultured weeaboos. Sometimes you just miss like the cultural landmark titles. Like you've skipped over the dog shit, but sometimes that's formative. Like this, is how I feel about people who haven't watched Hitalia.
Oh my gosh, you just brought me back to I had friends who watched Hitalia and would ask me like to record the skits. They were in the cosplay and I had the camera. Oh my god.
I feel sorry for you. I feel incredibly sorry for you. That sounds awful.
Why would you bring me back? Why did you do that?
That's like one of those things where you're laying in bed and you just like you like feel like you're falling and you're like, holy shit, I can't believe I was that cringe in middle school. It's one of those.
Yeah, and then you spend 5 minutes having that thought, and then you realize pretty quickly, like, oh yeah, well, everyone is like that, so it's fine. It's whatever.
That's what I tell myself.
Yeah. That's the silent lie that we all have. Like, oh yeah, everyone was schizo. It's fine. It's fine.
And so, are you looking forward to anything in particular other than Dragon Ball?
Well, I guess the new Boruto chapter. Well, what do you? I mean, there is a new Dragon Ball. There's Dragon Ball Daima. It wasn't. First episode wasn't that good. It was animated pretty well, but the story doesn't seem to be super good.
What are they gonna do without Toriyama?
Well, he worked on Daima, so we don't have to answer that question just yet.
We're not there. We're not there yet. We don't have to worry.
No. He had an understudy, Toyotaro, who was doing the manga version of Super throughout Super's run. And the manga version of Super is like way, way, way better than the anime run. So I think it's in good hands.
Does he have a very similar art style?
Yes, But if you ask like someone who's only a fan of Dragon Ball, then no.
Okay.
Because the people who are like super big Dragon Ball fans are like able to tell who animated a given episode of Dragon Ball based on how the characters are animated, based on like how one guy starts flying. It's like, oh, this guy started flying that way. Oh, this is a Masahiro episode. Like,
it's like they're picking out like the individual like animators in Indonesia.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is how this guy draws a flash step. So this has to be so and so. I mean, yes, it's pretty similar. It's not as refined, but nothing's going to be. Like Toriyama's like a once in a lifetime fucking genius.
Yeah, visionary.
He's the best that there is at expressions. He's incredible at landscapes and buildings and machinery
and character design
in a way that is gonna take like a lifetime to learn how to do.
And fucking coolness factor, bro. There's a reason everybody loves Dragon Ball. Literally everybody. You can't name a single person who's like, I'm not really that big a fan of Dragon Ball. It's a crowd pleaser.
No one's gonna be as good as Toriyama, but Toyotaro's
even when things escalated, like as ludicrous as it was, he was able to genuinely figure out what to do, which I think I think there were many times that he wanted to quit, obviously, but even when he couldn't quit, he figured out a way. I just don't know if a lot of creators have that ability. There was something to that.
Playing Sparking Zero, it's like, you know, a lot of the times when you play a Dragon Ball game, it's like a beat by beat, super slow. Let's go through the entire fucking thing, step by step, just like it was in the anime. Sparking Zero, it's just like, here's like one screenshot from this fight. Okay, yeah, so that fight happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. And you'll get through like 20 episodes of Dragon Ball in like 30 seconds.
That's what you gotta do with a series that's 20 years or 30 years long.
Right, but the previous games would actually like do a fully animated like one-to-one cutscene of like the pre-fight and post-fight dialogue and all that stuff. But anyway, what I'm kind of getting at is going through those at that speed, it's become easier to see, like, even though it was a weekly anime, and weekly anime kind of have a lot of pressure and difficulties in foreshadowing and planning, you can see decisions that Toriyama made where he's like, I'm going to do this, and then 30 chapters from now, this is going to happen. And it'll only be possible because I did this earlier. Rather than 30 chapters later, like, you can tell when 30 chapters later someone's going, oh shit, what do I do? 30 chapters ago I said this, maybe pull something out of that. He has a level of foresight that is difficult for someone to have with the workload that he had.
Rolling on with anime, Raccoon, I did not ask you before the show, did you watch episode 1 of either Dan or Uzumaki?
What's Dan?
Oh, so you don't know about Dan?
You mean dun 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 dun.
So you haven't
you gotta red pill me. I've only watched about.
You haven't watched either?
I'm a fake weeaboo, dude. I've only watched about 30 anime total, and all the good ones.
So let me get this straight. So you play shmups in Japanese, and you know Dragon Ball.
No, that's the way
Fine.
to be. That's good. It's better. Animes waste your time.
What am I supposed to do?
It's objectively correct.
What am I supposed to do? Have a conversation with you about Uzumaki again?
Yeah.
If anything,
let's hear it.
Stop playing VNs and just play more
Okay.
shmups. Give up on the VNs and the JRPGs.
Oh, I
All in on
can't.
shmups.
They're coming out with Kimi ga Nozomu Eien next this month, actually, in a week.
Flesh and Blood fun is fleeting. Seek eternal high scores.
That's right.
All right. I guess we'll start with Dan.
Dandadan is like a... I'll give the backstory on it before I give the synopsis. The author of Dandadan was submitting potential manga to be serialized in Shonen Jump to his editor, and they were all like stereotypical battle shonen. And then his editor was like, listen, don't submit a single new idea to me until you've read 100 shoujo manga, like 100 girls mangas instead of
100
submitting
chapters or 100 individual shows?
100 of them. Yes, 100 full mangas. And then the author did that. And then the next thing he submitted was Don to Don. And his editor was like, all right, we can publish this.
Why did he need to be balanced out that hard?
Because all he was submitting was like generic, like, here's two characters fighting shit. He was like he didn't understand the need for like character relationships to develop to draw the reader into the story. And then Don to Don is like, within like 30 seconds of the first episode, it's like, oh, these characters rule. I want these characters to get along. Let's see what they do. It is like a breakneck speed of establishing these characters and what their deals are and why you should be invested in how they interact. So basically, the first character is like a half Gyaru, half tomboy, like very attractive but very rough around the edges girl.
Those are two based characteristics, by the way. I already love
who
her.
is in love with the Japanese version of Sylvester
Hard
Stallone.
Gyaru, by the way. We're not talking soft. Like, her friends have the dough makeup. Like, we'll never see them again, but
So she has a massive crush on the real world Japanese actor Takakura Ken, who's like, he played the live action version of Golgo 13, which is probably the only thing that any American has a chance of recognizing him in. But he's like a Clint Eastwood, Sylvester Stallone, like super macho, doesn't say much
stoic
type of character. He's a stoic. She's also by blood a like spirit medium, and then her she on a whim like sticks up for this nerd guy that's getting bullied, and the nerd guy is a super big like believer in UFOs, and
he's a big conspiracy nut. He's into cryptids. He's into all that shit.
yeah, cryptids and aliens.
But he doesn't believe in ghosts at all.
And neither of them believe in the other thing. He does not believe in ghosts or spirits.
Yeah, he's
in
like,
any capacity.
what are you stupid?
Yes,
You believe in
exactly.
Yeah, what are
ghosts?
he's like, so he literally says the president has already met the aliens and made a contract with them. And then she's like, oh yeah, you know, my grandma is a psychic. She talks to ghosts. And he's like, oh, what are you, stupid? Ghosts don't exist. And vice versa with her and Alien. So they make a bet in episode 1 where he's gonna go to a haunted place that's like certified haunted with ghosts. And she's gonna go to like a certified this is where people get abducted spot. And whichever one sees a real ghost or a real alien has to be the other one's slave for a month. And they both see a ghost and an alien and hijinks ensue.
Yeah. This is very quickly paced. It happens very quickly.
That's the first like 3
It
minutes of
is
the episode.
incredibly slapstick. It is animated by Science Saru, who did Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, and they do a lot of stuff, and the animation that they're doing here it's honestly, if you're at all like familiar with Studio Trigger, if you see this animation, you're going to be very excited. Like, this to me is very much like, not Trigger in terms of edge runners, but Trigger and Gainax all the way back with like Fooly Cooly and shit. Very, very squeeze and stretch, very, very fluid, very animated, very impressive.
Yeah, they've got a pretty decent pedigree. They do the Shin-Chan movies, like all of them. They did Space Dandy, they did Garou, Devilman Crybaby. They're gonna do. I think you already said they're gonna.
No, I have not. They're doing the new Goofball Gets. So it's a Get series focusing more aligned with the manga.
They've got a really well established.
Yeah,
pedigree.
so it's a hell of a series. It's like very unique. It's very funny, and it's also very heartwarming. Really, really good. I think it's great.
So the whole series is out. You can go watch that right now.
I think they're on episode 2 right now. The manga's like 100 chapters.
Yeah.
So the manga is ongoing and it's only 100 chapters. So it's It's only been a couple years since the manga even started.
It seems that so episode 1 was just chapter 1. So
Yeah, episode 1 was exactly where, like, to the sentence where chapter
yeah,
1
so
is.
it's, if that pace maintains, yeah, it's probably gonna be pretty hard to keep pace. You know, the series only started like 3 years ago, and it already got adapted. So I think people really like it. I think something that really harms the series' impact, and the reason that people aren't talking about it as much, is because people are very focused on Uzumaki right now, and also Dan leaked a few months back. So I think that's really taken the wind out of the sails. But I hope people pay attention to it, because it's really fucking good.
It was only the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So.
Hopefully, it just needs some clips to go viral, and then people will go like, "What? What the fuck?"
I'm pretty in there on anime Twitter, and nobody was posting any of the leaked stuff until it actually came.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. You know, it's a little harder for most people to get a hold of like leaked content. We also watched Uzumaki, which everyone's talking about. Uzumaki.
It sucks.
This time, not for good reasons, I hear.
Uzumaki.
Episode 1 is, it's alright, but even episode 1 is like, they're both this sort of like weird, occult, surreal thing, but Don is blowing it out of the water, and like, it should be eating its lunch.
Junji Ito is very special to me. I've known about Junji Ito for like 10 years, I think, at this point. Hellstar Remina.
You own a spider named Tomie.
I have a tarantula named Tomie. One of my favorite books of his is Hellstar Remina, which is like this very interesting horror story. It's very 1950s pulp sci-fi, but with the cosmic eldritch horror twist of like, what if there was a moon that was a mirror image of the Earth? And then things get real bad real quick. And that's just like a whole series. And he's very good at those like weird ideas that sort of develop into these weird things, these simplistic ideas. So Uzumaki, if you're not familiar, is just there is a town, and it is like this small town, and it starts to develop these weird patterns of supernatural activity that all seem to fixate on spiral patterns. So like, someone will be obsessed with spirals in some form. Someone's birthmark is going to slowly be changing into a spiral. There's going to be water currents that are like becoming more and more spirals. And then, you know, that gradually evolves until the town pretty much devours itself. I think it's pretty well regarded as like one of Junji Ito's biggest things out there. Like, it's up there with Gyo. I think I had heard of Gyo first before Uzumaki, at least when I had first learned about Junji Ito. So Adult Swim. And what do you know remember what the actual studio name is that animated this anime they put out?
Let's see.
I don't even remember.
Oh, it was Production IG and Adult Swim. That's right.
Oh,
yeah.
That's right. Production IG.
You know how often Production IG and Adult Swim produce
Production
anime?
IG, the studio that just went bankrupt.
Yeah. You know how often they've been making good anime in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I only know Production IG is the people who did fucking Ghost in the show. Like, what happened there?
That Production IG existed. You are correct. That has not been Production IG for a long time. So Production IG went bankrupt this year, officially announcing that they are like pretty much insolvent. There's some weird shit going around. Like, it's not clear if they're fully going under. I think the last thing I heard was that they're going bankrupt and the company's control is being liquidated, and then the assets are being returned to their quote unquote rightful owners, and everyone that's doing terrible things and has been mismanaging it for years is kind of like getting kicked out finally. But obviously at this point the damage has kind of been a lot. And that includes like Fooly Cooley, who was also doing like Adult Swim was also contracting production IG to make the Fooly Cooley sequels.
I thought you were going to bring up Halo Legends.
No, I was not. The staff that used to be production IG, a lot of those guys were either demoted or kicked out or put in situations where they could not control their IPs. There was a lot of stuff where IPs would just get misappropriated and things would get approved that really weren't approved by the original creators. So, you know, it would lead to a lot of that, like, kind of, oh, you know, this is the original studio. And then it comes out and you're like, well, why is this nothing like the original? It's because it's not even the original studio.
Yeah, I mean, they used to make fucking, like, Pat Labor and shit like that. Or like Jinro.
Jinro, goddamn.
They've fallen really far.
So, Uzumaki. About 4 years ago, going back, Uzumaki, it was announced via a teaser on Adult Swim's like various media pipelines. They had a short little animated teaser showing that they could animate Uzumaki. They were doing an anime. Colin Stetson, which if you're not familiar, is a like sort of Foley horror music composer. He did the soundtrack for a horror film called Hereditary. Very weird, bizarre musician, very haunting. They were all production IG. They were all going to make this really good anime adaptation of Uzumaki. Adult Swim's involved. Everyone was like, holy shit, this is coming out. Then, like, nothing really happens. There's just, like, not too much in the rumor mill. I think there were some leaks talking about, like, voice actor casting, but nothing really substantial. Then the next thing that really happens is COVID happens. And there's, like, one little teaser. And then the next thing is a statement saying, don't worry, COVID will not impact production at all. It's we're gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine.
So then COVID impacted that production at all, right?
Yeah, COVID must have impacted production because we didn't hear anything. And then COVID ended officially. And we still didn't hear anything. And it was getting a little weird. And then, just this year, we start to hear, Uzumaki is coming out. Uzumaki is coming out. Get ready, guys. Right in time for Halloween. It's coming. Don't ask any questions. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Episode 1 drops. I honestly didn't watch it when episode 1 came out because I was kind of, I was a little bit irked and perturbed. I very much get like a little upsetty when my spaghetti gets stirred around and people don't acknowledge things. So I was just kind of like, whatever. Like people were saying it was really great. It was really beautifully animated. It's perfect. It's GOAT. This is the best anime ever is what I was hearing via Twitter. And then episode 2 drops. And episode 2 is, well, essentially an assembly cut of an anime. There are individual keyframes there. There is animation, but the frame rate is pretty bad. It's barely animated. There's a lot of keyframes, not much movement at all. Not much movement in background assets. Hair swirls and stuff aren't moving. Mouth flaps aren't really moving. Characters that apparently just sort of disappear from scenes so that the scene is like easier to animate. And I saw clips of that and I said, okay, I guess I should watch episode 1. So I watched episode 1 and I was not that blown away. It is reading Uzumaki, I think I do recommend it, and I definitely recommend the live action Uzumaki film just because it's a very good campy Japanese horror film and it's got some pretty good effects. Nothing, they're not realistic, but they are interesting to see. They are interesting to witness. But in terms of like this being like the de facto way or somehow a replacement for the original manga, or even like this is what Junji Ito deserves, or even their fans, I highly disagree. After episode 2 dropped, a tweet came out from the creative director. Is that right, Ants? Do you remember?
It was some member of the staff.
A very important member of the staff. I believe it was the creative director.
I think it's the main guy, yeah.
Who said that yeah, production fucked us over, which is pretty bizarre. And he said, like, we had 4 choices. One of them was not release anything. One of them was release episode 1 and nothing else. One of them was release episode 1 and
one was release everything we have, warts and all. And then I forget what the other one was. I think it was only 3
Yeah,
options.
maybe it was only 3 options. Why they chose this one, I don't know.
They wanted the money.
What money? No one will buy this. I don't know. So
No, they'll buy the Blu-ray version, which fixes all the things that they got wrong, right?
oh my god.
I don't think it's fixable
Oh
that
my
way.
god, that would be so crazy. Could you imagine if they sold a Blu-ray version of this anime and the Blu-ray version had the fucking fixed animation? We gave it 2 months, we shipped it overseas. That would be so evil. I feel bad speaking that into existence. That's never happened before, but they could do it. I had an evil thought that and this would be really immoral. No one should do this. I don't want anyone to do this. They could do it though. If they were really scummy and if they were like really evil, they could take that footage and they could artificially increase and generate animation in between frames with AI. Like, it's almost there. But yeah, it's really bad. I disagree with the idea that releasing all of it is a good idea. I don't know why you would do that. To me, that seems really spiteful. Maybe it is better, I guess, because then people really know the state of things. I'm curious to see what episode 3 and 4 look like, I guess, if episode 2 is so fucking rough.
Well, they're not going to be better.
This is not like a ha-ha, like it's so bad. You know that one, like, Rock Me Nora or whatever the fuck?
No, this is like really sad. Like I said, I'm not advocating and saying like episode 1 was this masterpiece that everyone's claiming it was, but for what it was a decent stable frame rate. It had a lot of moving elements. You know, Junji Ito, his whole thing is he loves line work and detail work. Big thing is like hair and like individual hair strands. I can't think of any other authors to really bring up that kind of do that with their style. And animating that probably is a huge pain in the ass. And you can tell Uzumaki is heavily 3D assisted to the point that it's almost a little nauseating. But it is animated and it was probably very difficult to do. So episode 2 is like, I don't know. It's gotta be 15 frames per second. It's gotta be like very, very close to rough draft. It's not great. Just a lot of mistakes. And it doesn't look like the kind of mistakes that appear from outsourcing either. It just really, truly looks like you just did not have time. You did not have the staff. So, yeah, that's Uzumaki for you. I wasn't hyped before. I was hyped when it got announced. I wasn't hyped. And then I wasn't hyped. And now I'm not disappointed. So everything's fine.
I'm glad it's all fine.
I do feel bad for people that were hyped, though. That does suck. I wish they had gotten what they wanted.
This is a W for keeping your expectations in
Yeah,
check.
never care about anything. That's the lesson. Be spiteful.
Those people were outplayed and outgunned.
Speaking of spiteful, Silent Hill 2 is out.
Has anybody here played Silent Hill 2?
No.
Yeah. Not the remake.
Yeah, no, not the remake.
Alright, nobody's played the remake? Okay, cool. We can skip to the discourse then.
The discourse.
Hell
the
yeah.
discourse. Oh no.
I mean, I've seen about 10 seconds of the remake's gameplay, so I think I've got everything I need.
Yeah, I guess we can have the generalized discussion of
Yeah, I mean, you know, I just wish games were allowed to be even slightly difficult anymore.
I wish that video games were allowed to be different. That's really what's pissing me off. I'm very much tired of the uniqueness of video games leaving themselves by proxy of these remakes or retellings of classic video
Well,
games.
don't worry. Next time they remake Silent Hill, it'll be way different. It'll be an open world action game, and you'll use the triggers to block an attack.
I looked at a Reddit thread today that was titled, "Now that Silent Hill 2 remake has come out, do you think it surpasses the original?" And it's all no. And everyone's just like, yeah, I mean, it's just not it. It's like $70 gets you that.
I mean, it's slop.
Well, how do you like surpass the original, which was the originals are like created by people who were making games in like the arcade era, making games where they really didn't have like lots of design trends to work off of. They were largely doing something unique
They
with
were in it
their.
for the love of the game.
Well, yes, they were also probably like heavily crunched and stressed and whatever, but they were doing like unique things. Whereas these remakes are, they either focus too hard on like trying to make it as close to the original as possible, or they stray too far and they just lose the sauce of whatever made the original game mechanically interesting.
I mean, if they had essentially just upscaled the textures and then spent the remaining 80% of their development efforts on recreating the fog, that would have been a better remake than what we got.
I kind of am actually prone to agree. But I think the main thing that I kind of take away from it is like everyone pretty much at this point is, if they're at all familiar with Silent Hill, they know that it's like this lightning in a bottle situation. Silent Hill is a team.
It's an accident.
It's an accident. It's not even like a ragtag group of developers. It's like it shouldn't have happened. It's like somebody time traveled back in time and they altered history to make a survival horror game. And you know, I still don't click with Silent Hill 1, and Silent Hill 1, from what I understand, wasn't received well, and that is the genesis for Silent Hill 2, which is then considered this like landmark of a horror game that's like led to all this inspiration and stuff. And to me, I think, I don't know if I can speak for what every Silent Hill fan wants, but I just know what I wanted, which was just a port. I really am not interested in, I don't want anything to be touched too much. I'm not interested in reimaginings. I'm not interested in someone trying to polish things too much. I'm not interested in seeing what your character's costume design changes. I'm not interested in you like throwing in cutesy little sight gags that acknowledge bad HD ports. I think that if you have the free time to do that, that's probably indicative of like, that just means your heart's probably in the wrong place. That's kind of what I think. I know that that's like kind of snarky, but really, I mean, I think when your head's in a project, your head doesn't leave the project until it's done. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't really excited from the initial get-go. It looked to me like it could be kind of promising. Bloober Team did Shadow of the Colossus, right?
I think that's Blue Point.
Was that Blue Point?
Yeah, I think you're right.
For some reason, Bloober is only reminding me of, oh god, Good Burger.
Yeah, I know they did fucking Layers of Fear.
Oh god, right! That's why I hate them. I forgot. Oh, fuck. One of the worst games ever fucking made. Yeah, Layers of Fear. So, yeah, naturally, I was like a little bit, Observer's only slightly better, but, you know, you can only elevate it so much. Then I just kind of checked out. I didn't really pay attention to it. I saw that they were making some changes and I went like, those are all like nitpicks and I don't really care. Like, I'm not going to buy this. I'm not going to play it. And then I saw that they were like selling an early access pass for a single player game alongside their pre-order bonus. And I went like, Okay, so yeah, Konami is just kind of still that company at the end of the day.
Konami is like releasing these ports of the GBA and DS Castlevania games, and everybody's like, "Oh, is Konami so back?" Nuh-uh, they still suck fucking ass. They really gotta like prove to me that they're not just gonna fumble the bag, like even harder than they have in the last 10 goddamn years.
I'm convinced that it's an accident that Order of Ecclesia is released. I still don't believe it. I see it on the Steam list, and I'm like, what? Oh, is that a glitch? Like, how did that?
Because like Konami like sort of outsources that kind of work nowadays. That I think they gave it to M2 to make that port. And M2 are like one of the best companies in gaming secretly. They actually did they do these M2 shot triggers ports of shoot 'em ups like Esprade and Dodonpachi, and they're secretly the best fucking remakes ever. Not because they go in, they change all the graphics and add like humor for modern audiences. No, they just port the original game. They maybe add like an extra mode that changes up the scoring, and they add like little gadgets so you can see what like score that you're getting or where you're at in the stage. And they release it as is. These games were good as they were, and you can still go back to plenty of games and have a ton of fun with them.
I was looking at screenshots of the Dominus collection. Wow, yeah. God damn. I gotta pick that up. Or Order of Ecclesia is like so good, but I also enjoyed Arius are really good. So yeah, if the studio that does that is really good, it shows, because immediately the first thing I think of is like, oh, it's the DS. How do you deal with that screen layout? And the answer is you just quarter it, and they did it. It looks perfect.
And mostly, I mean, the second screen in the Castlevania games mostly didn't.
Yeah. It matters a little in Order of Ecclesia, but it depends on which game, right? SMT4, it's a little bit more complex. So Bloober Team, and then I watched just some gameplay of it, and me and Ants watched the exact same clip of gameplay, and it really just looked like Raccoon. Are you familiar with Dead Space at all?
No.
Damn. Are you familiar with Manhunt at all?
Actually, I don't play video games. I play a niche set of 4 or 5 games over and over again.
You realize we're doing a video game podcast, right?
That's right. I'm really media literate.
Well, that can take you really far. If your media literacy is really high, you don't actually have to play anything.
That's right. I could just make informed guesses on what I think my take on games.
I feel like I'm dragging a dead body. I feel like I'm like dragging a dead body across the ground and going like, yeah, it was, oh my God.
It's like eating a handful of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Like, you get the gist of it.
God damn. Well, to describe it to a non-native gamer.
Describe it to the audience.
To describe what...
That's actually the trick of it. It doesn't matter what your co-host has heard of or hasn't heard of. The point is you're describing it to the audience at all times.
Right.
Asking your co-host if they've heard of something, you're not having a conversation with Raccoon. You're having a conversation with the audience.
That's right.
Brilliant. This is one weird trick that podcasters will use. This is one weird trick. So for those in the know, and for those not in the know, and for everyone who maybe doesn't know as much as they should know, and for those who know things that they shouldn't know, survival horror games, they have combat sometimes. And oftentimes that combat involves swinging implements at enemies, because like guns are a little too powerful, or really can be. Or like guns can play into resource management, but then you still need the player to be able to take out enemies, right? And there are a lot of different ways to handle the way that works. When Silent Hill, and I guess not so much, not Resident Evil, but like Silent Hill specifically, and a lot of like those slower, harder games were around, it was more cumbersome to navigate the player character. People call that like tank controls, but it also kind of created this emergent gameplay system where it was really always a gamble on attacking enemies. And this would create like this dynamic rush feeling of like, do I go in for the hit on this enemy? What is the reward? Is it going to clear up this room? Is there something I need to get? Do I really need to kill this enemy? Will this enemy stay dead? Will it get back up? There's lots of unique emerging gameplay that comes from just this combat scenario, and a lot of it stems from how hard is it to actually attack and kill a thing, right? So if you have a horror game and the player is got a perfect camera and their controls are absolutely perfect and their melee is like pretty predictable and impeccable and the enemy like isn't going to attack back, it's no longer a gamble. So you've like eliminated that level of threat. And so what you've done is you've turned something that's like cumbersome and clunky and scary into something closer to a hack and slash. It's not like action, but it's there.
Or for you to make like enemies meaningfully scary in a control system where you have like full 360 degree and camera control, you need to beef up the enemies immensely. One of the great things about like Resident Evil 4 is it plays so great, but you know that game has tank control, but it accommodates that by like the Ganados are walking slowly towards you, they're lumbering, and you can like kick them away if they get too close. But in the remake, they're running and gunning at you.
That to me is kind of the thing that should have been done. And the gameplay, from what I saw, it looked like they had made those adjustments, but they hadn't really considered like how those enemies had to be changed to accommodate for that. So the enemies just didn't get altered. And then, I had obviously read a few reviews, which is a bad habit. You should never read reviews ever. But according to the reviews, it's like 15 hours long instead of 8, which is insane. Adding 7 hours, that's crazy.
On that point, you should never read a review, but you should go watch my review of Bakaru. I know this is like 2 hours into the fucking podcast. I really know how to do plugs, but put a lot of effort into that video. Go watch it. All right, go ahead.
Bakaru. What is Bakaru?
This is a game, it's done by Goodfeel. Again, going back to, I only played the same, 3 games. This is like a Nintendo game. It's made by the same people who did Yoshi's Woolly World, Kirby's Epic Yarn, etc. But they're on their own for this one. They made like a spiritual successor to Ganbare Goemon that's sort of like a 3D platformer with a ton of different levels based on Japan. It's very fun. I recommend it to you if just done playing like a AAA big game and then you want to go into like another big AAA game. Throw Bakaru in that middle of those because it's fun, it's lighthearted, and it's like kind of, I don't know, it's just a good time.
Or if you're broke and you're considering spending $70 on a AAA video game, don't buy the AAA video game and play Bakaru instead.
That's that? Right. It's only about $40. I make the point in my video that it's like one of the everybody says they want these AA games that are like less scope and budget, and then they never go actually play them, and they're good. Go out and fucking play this one, or play it. Don't overlook a game if it's like $30-$40.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely like this era of. Let's reimagine Silent Hill 2 and let's charge $70 for it and let's add on a pre-order bonus and that's going to have early access and like we're going to do the same thing for Space Marine 2 and like here's all of this like extremely unethical like and extremely expensive stuff. It's really made me like kind of step away from all of it and just kind of realize like this sucks. There are so many people out there who deserve your money. They really do. They have spent longer on their games than these devs have. They actually have their heart in the right place. They're not trying to take advantage of you. And they have like unique perspectives that you can go and see. You know, it's like going and seeing a random movie at the $5 movie theater. You might just find your new favorite movie. So I definitely think like this year in particular has really forced me to kind of just say, I'm done with the big horror stuff because the big horror stuff kind of sucks. And I'm going to try everything I can that's as cheap. And, a lot of times I find stuff that isn't very good at all, and whatever, you throw away like $3 or $5 and you're like, that sucked. But sometimes you find something really, really special.
I hope this doesn't need to be said to listeners of a spin-off of Video Ditch podcast, but I don't know, go out and play something new. That's the message you should take away from this episode of Bootleg Video Ditch podcast.
Yeah, go play a video game that you've never played before, ever.
Why don't you go ditch the other video games that you're familiar with? Play something new.
Why don't you videotape the ditch that you were going to put your video games in that cost a lot, and then
Well, kids, if you've learned anything, I hope it's never spend more than $20 on a computer game.
That's right. If you gotta spend $0, it's whatever. So anyways, do you want to wrap it up? It's
Yeah. So, real quick, what's coming up? What's coming out? What are you looking for that's coming out?
Well, I'm only really excited for like 2 games total. One is Mirrored Soul, which has an episode on Video Ditch. You can go watch it. The other is Wholesome Monster Girl Academia. Now, this is a dating sim game with monster girls, but the twist is it's Catholic. It's made by a Catholic. There's Bible verses in it and shit. There's absolutely no cussing or no haram content. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Now, will this game have a Protestant spin-off shortly after?
You'll have to ask the developer. My guess is no.
Oh, I see. Okay. Missed opportunity. Something for them to note.
But for the games coming out this year, I'm looking forward to Anton Blast. That game looks like a ton of fun. Wario Land 4 is like peak gaming. And Anton Blast looks like it's just more Wario Land 4, but with, different shit going on. Definitely like a lot more passion in that room than the people who are working on fucking Silent Hill 2.
I like the mind reading. Like, there's at least one guy in that studio who's like, no, actually, like, I got a tattoo of Pyramid Head on my thigh. It's actually like really important to me.
Maybe a bad example, but you catch my cold, like Concord.
Yeah, like Concord.
And the other game that I'm looking forward to next fucking week, I can't believe it. Be busy. You actually won't be looking forward to game releases. Games will just come out and you're like, God damn, that's out. But anyways, in 1 week, it's Kimi ga Nozomo Ein, which is a visual novel done by my boys over at Aj, who also did Muv-Luv, and who did Muv-Luv Alternative, which is the greatest visual novel ever made. And Kimi ga Nozomo Ein. It's less of the mechs and more of like the dating sim stuff. This one's supposedly really sad, so can't wait to cry, I guess.
If you're playing a video game that makes you scared, I guess it's equally valid to play a video game that makes you cry.
That's a mark of a good game. Like, when you play like a really good game that makes you cry, chef's kiss. At least like 1 point more on the fucking Metacritic scale.
All right. So I think that we've hit all of our key points.
Well, hang on. I didn't get to say what I was looking forward to that was coming out.
Yeah, what game are you looking forward to, Ants?
I don't know. I mean, maybe probably a new season of Dragon Ball: The Breaker. Like season 7.
Alright.
Something like that, probably.
Let's wrap it on that. Thank you very much for watching this bootleg edition of Video Ditch. Super Sammy Com and Somebody Stop Me. We'll be back soon. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.